After finishing last week's video about the spirit eels, I got to thinking, I never really covered the spirit jellyfish on this channel before. I've combed through so many enemies throughout Elden Ring's base game and Shadow of the Erdtree, but I never saw the need to explore these calm spirits, as the only quest related to them is seemingly very straightforward, and there are almost no mentions of them in item descriptions, aside from a shield made from their heads. However, when thinking more deeply about what it means to be a corporeal spirit floating around the lands between, I realized that the spirit jellyfish may be a piece of the larger puzzle when it comes to what exactly death is. With that said, I'm going to break down what we know about these creatures, and dive into my theory of what their existence really means in the world of Elden Ring. I don't have a fun segue for this one. I'm just going to come right out and say you should check out the sponsor of this week's video, Quantum Marmalade. An indie sci-fi comic about mad scientists, alien creatures, and delicious cupcakes. Danny Walker is the writer and draws inspiration from stories like Dune, Scavenger's Reign, and of course, Elden Ring. Danny himself is a huge Elden Ring nerd and claims that the Frenzied Flame ending is the best ending. All hail the Lord of Chaos. Anyway, putting aside Danny's incorrect opinions, I've read Quantum Marmalade, and I love it. The Kickstarter link is in the description below, and there's even special early bird pricing for a limited number of backers. Don't miss out on this series, because it really is crafted with love. And with that said, let's talk about some jellyfish. Unless you lucked out and spoke to Ranni before Roderica on your first run through Elden Ring, it's highly likely that the first spirit summon you'll ever have by your side is the spirit jellyfish. This helpful companion introduces you to the basics of how to pull aggro with your summon, and is a great help in our first battle against the Fell Omen. While it is rather squishy, the extra help goes a long way in teaching you how to take advantage of the summon system we've been given in this game. Mechanics aside, the description of our new friend is the first clue we have to what the spirit jellyfish truly are. A floating spirit that illuminates its surroundings. Prone to tears, the jellyfish girl searches for her distant home, will bravely spew poison at foes on her summoner's behalf. It seems her name is Aurelia. So the jellyfish, while it never speaks to us, is a girl named Aurelia, and she comes from a land far away from where Roderica found her in Limgrave. Before getting into where this home actually is, let's take a look at the jellyfish themselves as an enemy type. Much like their cousins, the spirit eels, the jellyfish are docile when riding past them on Torrent. It's rare you find jellyfish in the world already aggroed and ready to attack you, and while that may happen, they typically won't turn on you unless you strike first. These creatures seem to enjoy simply drifting through the lands between, unbothered by the flora or fauna, unless it becomes antagonistic toward one of their own. This makes it distressing to know there are some who would bring harm to them intentionally, as we know from the jellyfish shield. The head of a spirit jellyfish, commonly found floating above sacred ground throughout the lands between, wielded without modification as a shield. The see-through head is extremely light, but its flesh is supple, providing absolutely no protection from piercing attacks. We find this item when exploring the 4 belfries, left on a corpse surrounded by 4 spirit jellyfish. Apparently, they did not take kindly to the attack this man must have made on one of theirs, and he paid the price for his avarice. Now that we know the spirit jellyfish are intelligent, and certainly have some level of agency as they choose when to fight, not simply seeing everyone around them as an enemy, I think it's a good time to return to our friend Aurelia. Very late into our journey, as we make our way through the mountaintop of giants, we can find Aurelia's distant home in the Stargazer ruins, and when we do, there's another spirit jellyfish. But this one speaks, saying in the voice of a young girl,
"Sister, where did you go?" "You promised me when we turn 14, we go to see the stars." "I've been waiting ever so long. Forever and ever it seems."
If we summon our friend while standing before this jellyfish, she says,
"Dear sister, you're finally here. No time to waste. Let's see the stars.
The two jellyfish then disappear, presumably into the sky, so they can fulfill their wish. This is a sweet ending to a story you may not have even realized you were pursuing. But if we continue to explore around these ruins, just to the northeast, we find graves. Here lie Aurelia and Arliette, who never saw the stars. These jellyfish were once human, small girls, likely astrologers, who promised each other they would one day see the stars, only to die tragically young, possibly in the war with the giants. Some claim this means all of the spirit jellyfish are children, but I think something else is going on here. We know that the jellyfish were once human, but I don't believe being a child was a prerequisite to becoming one of them. I believe the spirit jellyfish are a representation of the lack of death in the lands between. We've discussed before how death is often represented by undersea life in Elden Ring. Godwyn's fishtail and scales, the spirit eels taking on the abilities of sea cucumbers, and the spirit jellyfish floating around the lands between as if they were living in the ocean, unburdened by the gravity that holds the rest of us to the ground. Their name, spirit jellyfish, is literal. They are the spirit of a living person, unbound from their physical form, but with nowhere to go, because death does not exist in this land, and there's nothing for their spirit to do but float from place to place. Or in Arliette's case, wait for her sister, so they can finally journey to the stars. This gives us an answer to the question, what happens to those who die in the lands between, unaffected by things like grace, death flame, those who live in death, or Erdtree burial? It seems they become free to live eternity as they see fit. Much like the real-life jellyfish, who are all but immortal, able to regenerate themselves forever, these spirit jellyfish are untouched by death, as long as we don't put them to the sword. One thing I find interesting is that when Ranni the Witch slew her Empyrean flesh, she needed her spirit to be bound to a doll. We've never had a good reason for why that was. Why her spirit couldn't be free to simply exist on its own. Perhaps Ranni would not have access to her vast magical strength without a physical form, but maybe her soul needed to be bound so that it didn't twist into a jellyfish itself. A wild idea, I know, and probably not accurate, but interesting nonetheless. Much like the spirit jellyfish, Ranni's spirit, pouring from her doll shell, is a shade of translucent blue, and while it retains its human form, it does make you wonder if there is a connection. The spirit jellyfish and their complacency to float across the land endlessly for generations stands in stark contrast to everyone else in the lands between, who, while also dealing with their own forms of stasis, seem much more pained by their situations. Everyone else is so desperate to start a fight with the first tarnish they see, going through the motions in a never-ending cycle of violence, while these essentially immortal spirits are just kind of vibing. It makes you wonder who exactly these people were before their deaths. I think the idea that all of the jellyfish are the spirits of children can be considered valid if you view them through this lens. What reason would the children of the lands between have to pursue power? They likely had no true desire for battle growing up in the Golden Age, and if they suddenly passed on for one reason or another, I think it's fair to assume that in this new form, they'd simply want to continue living in peace. Of course, I don't think that's enough to definitively say that every jellyfish is the spirit of a child, but it could make sense. Thank you for joining us while we explored the spirit jellyfish 3 years too late. What did you think of our breakdown and theories relating to these possibly immortal spirits? Were the jellyfish all children lost to the horrors of war in the lands between? Or are we making too big a leap because Aurelia and Arliette are the only ones given a story? Is there a connection between Ranni's blue spirit and the blue spirit jellyfish? Do these spirit jellyfish only exist because they were never fed to the Erdtree and were not put back into its cycle? Do you slay these creatures when riding past, or leave them to enjoy their unbound wandering across the land? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Watch that button light up as I say like this video, And if you think we've earned it, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification so you never miss out on our weekly lore dives. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden Lore.